And we are live. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to hand over to Ben Beer, for this initial introduction.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another broadcast of our Security Everywhere LinkedIn Live event to help everyone, whether it's your friends and family, your business, or your colleagues and staff, be cyber aware and protected against the latest cyber scams and latest attacks. Joining us on the call today, we hope to have some more people who will be attending on the panel. But Mac, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for your help and support to make these the LinkedIn Live events happen. Mac's obviously the LinkedIn expert, and he's the driving force behind these events. We also have with us Paul Lopez from the Eastern Cyber Resilience Centre. So thank you for joining us again today, Paul. We hopefully have Simon Newman from the London Centre as well joining us, and of course our regular attendee and cyber warrior Theo Nell from Senat, who has prime experience of today's topics, as he works very closely with Francis and goes to help remediate and resolve the issues that arise when somebody has been compromised or attacked. So thank you all for joining us this morning. So today's topic is what to do if I've been scammed. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is across a range of subjects, from ransomware and attacks on business email. So very much from the corporate, from the business side of things. But not only that, small businesses rely heavily on social media, such as Instagram and Facebook Marketplace, in order to conduct their business. And they can spend, 10 years plus building up an audience, building up a customer base, whether it's, there was one lady that we knew that did wedding cakes. So obviously she had all her pictures of 10 years of what she'd done and what she'd worked on. We've got another who's a chef, and again had over 10,000 followers on Instagram and lost her account. And so it's what we can do to actually get our social media accounts back, as well as the main tools and the network compromises that we see as well. So I'd like to start today with Theo. Now, you've obviously worked with us with a couple of customers that did actually get ransomed. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you had to do to get these guys back online, what the knock-on effect was for them, and how we got them back in action in the end.
Well, good morning, Ben, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the session. Sure, being ransomed is not a lot of fun, I can tell you that much. One of the biggest issues that we have to deal with is the fact that the company owners lose confidence in themselves, they lose confidence in their ability, they lose confidence in the fact that they can actually do business moving forward. And one of the biggest things that we try and help with is for those business owners to understand that it's, although not directly their fault, that there are still things that we can do to help them to recover the brand, the communication with their customers, etc. So one of the biggest things that we needed to face was the amount of downtime within the business. And it depends on which systems you have in place in order to recover from an attack. One company, we're lucky they had backup systems in place, and it only cost them 2 days worth of downtime. Another company, we're down for 2 weeks. So what is it that you think your business will lose with a day's worth of downtime? You need to go and multiply that out. So so how do we fix these things? The first thing that we need to do is check whether or not the company is still compromised. And the only way to do that is to go and do a full network and system review of all the applications, all the platforms that they use. We look at preventing access to the internet by systems, especially if the compromise is still taking place, and then only go and allow access to certain sites or certain portals so that we can actually help with the remediation of what's happened. Those things would usually include things like your backup platforms, making sure that it is controlled and managed. We make sure that the systems that were compromised are removed from the network. We perform network scans, vulnerability scans using specialized tools to see if we can find the root cause, and then also to go and perform forensics on those networks. So that, in short, that's the sort of stuff that we do, Ben. Does that answer your question? And you're muted.
Yes, I was just finding the mute button. When I rearranged my screen, the mute button was just off the bottom of the display. Yes, yeah, no, that's exactly the kind of thing that I was hoping that we could share today, because it's the procedural method that then has to take place in order to make sure that obviously the actual infection itself has gone, but not only that there haven't been any additional backdoors left on the network, so that scammers can then get in again. One thing that's particularly not well recognised is that companies that get ransomware once very often get ransomed again within the following month, because it gets out that they have been ransomed, which means that other attackers then think, oh, they're going to be vulnerable. They haven't got good systems in place. Can I get in there as well? Or even, as you mentioned about the looking for additional areas of compromise, that the initial attacker then goes in for a second bite of the cherry and tries to scam them a second time. And I know with one of the customers that we work with, that did actually happen. They got done 2 weeks following the first attack. And of course, one thing that I was really pleased you mentioned is it's not just the downtime, it's not just the cost in terms of reputation and finance from not being able to run as a business, it's the emotional consequences as well. And that's whether you're the person that maybe had their account compromised in the first place to cause the infection, or as the management team that are responsible for being able to pay hundreds of members of staff's wages and protect their livelihoods. There's a whole emotional and mental consequence for the people that are involved in these things. It's an incredibly stressful time, and it's recognizing that these people actually need the support as well. And what's been good actually from obviously having a broad view of these topics for a number of years now, is that it always used to be the blame game. How did we get compromised? Whose fault was it? Who's to blame? And actually, that's a very it's good to see that sort of attitude has changed, particularly over the last sort of couple of years with the massive rise in the ransomware attacks. In that this is a plague. This is specialist, skilled attackers prying on, and it might not be actually any one person. It could actually be a system vulnerability, as we saw with things like the SolarWinds attack on Microsoft. It was a supply chain attack. So these are very sophisticated and skilled attackers that are targeting people that within an organisation aren't going to necessarily be that technical, let alone up to speed on the latest sort of cyber technologies and prevention, methods of prevention. So it's been able to recognise that actually the people that we are victims, the people that get compromised are victims, and therefore need that help and support as well. So yeah, thank you very much, Theo. That was great.
Yeah, the days of sorry, Ben, just to carry on, the days of having the luxury to point fingers is gone. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about actually getting the business back online.
Yeah.
If you consider, really depending on what size the business is, you could be losing hundreds of pounds a day, or you could be losing thousands or millions of pounds per day. It really is about trying to get that business back up and running as fast as you can. And the only way that you can do that is to have those various layers of protection surrounding you. Mitigation is one thing, recovery is something else. So yeah, make sure that you've got multiple layers in place.
And just to finish off on the sort of ransomware side of things, people take it for granted that their data is in the cloud, so therefore they are protected against ransom, and it's so not the case, because if it's an offsite backup that's in the cloud, if that can be encrypted via the backup software that's connecting to the cloud, and also if you've got data in OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint, if they've compromised a system that's got those live connections open, they can get in and they can encrypt all your data that's in Microsoft OneDrive and all the sharing, as well as the Google Drive and their collaboration mechanisms, and I believe they can even get into Dropbox as well. If the connection's open on the machine, and so they've got an authenticated connection, they can get in there and they can ransom all that as well. So it is incredibly important. It's one of the most basic of basics for as long as I've been in IT, is that you have backups. And then ideally you have backups of the backups. But it's just making sure that we don't just consider, it's in the cloud, it's safe, it's being protected, because it's not. And that really needs to be, or there's a lot more awareness about that going on now, because we are starting to see ransomware attacks take place on cloud resources. Right, Paul, if I could hand over to you, if you can tell us a bit about the great work that the Eastern Cyber Resilience Centre does, and tell us a bit about the kind of things that you get approached about with people that have been hacked or scammed.
Thanks, Ben. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I've got a bit of a lag on my machine, so I can't tell whether I'm talking or not at the same time. Is that really okay? Okay, good. Yeah, well, thanks for that. Yeah, so the Eastern Cyber Resilience Centre, as we've spoken about on previous calls, it's part of a national network. London, Northwest, Northeast. There's a centre for every single region in the UK. And what we've been set up to do is to raise awareness of threats, and also to help businesses understand what their vulnerabilities might be when they're operating online. And give them the kind of guidance, most of which, not all of it, but most of which is National Cybersecurity Centre kind of sanctioned advice and guidance about what they can do to mitigate the threats that they're doing when they're operating online. I suppose, looking at the title of today's show about, what do I do if I've been hacked or scammed? I think if at that point, that's your first kind of exposure to any kind of cybersecurity, then you kind of missed the boat a bit, really. It's about, I think I wrote a blog a little while ago about incident response plans, and most businesses unfortunately find out that they haven't got one just after they've been hacked or scammed themselves. So it's about preparing for the worst. I think, from the industry now talks about the fact that everyone needs to assume that they are going to get hacked. So don't operate in this kind of misguided idea that you've got loads of security, and and it's not going to happen to me. It will happen to you. It'll happen to us, but it has happened to us. We've had phishing attacks in policing more broadly, but against the sensors as well. So it's about what you're going to do when you actually find out that you've been compromised. So it's about preparation is the first stage, I guess. Do you have insurance? A lot of businesses, I think less than 85% of businesses have got cyber insurance. Currently, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to get. Are your staff aware? Do they know what to look for? This thing about what do you do? What does it look like? Sometimes it's really obvious. If you've been ransomware, there'll be a ransom note, and you can't get access to your data. So it's fairly obvious you've been compromised. But in other cases, it's not so obvious as that. So what do you do? What do your staff know about what to do? And I think you both mentioned it, Theo, Ben. You both mentioned already that what is the culture of your company like? Is it blame culture? Who's done this? And even the language of being scammed. You've been tricked, you've been fooled, you've been conned, you've been scammed. It's a really, victim shaming. It's really, we all do it. I get that, but it's not about that. If you think that your device, your terminal, your mobile device, whatever it might be, if you think that you've experienced some kind of compromise, you need to tell somebody, and that's the first bit. So who do you tell? You tell a manager? Do you tell your IT department? You tell a co-worker? But you need to tell somebody straight as soon as you think that's happened. And don't dwell. The longer you leave it, the longer you delay, the bigger the problem ultimately can end up being. So you've got to act promptly as soon as something happens. That's the kind of thing that we tell the people who join our centre. And I guess other things as well, some obvious stuff. If you think that your financial details have been compromised, then clearly contact your bank, contact your financial providers, contact if it's a social media platform, tell them. Our experience, and you might be talking about a bit later about this, experience with Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, not very positive. Trying to get you try and find a phone number to contact somebody on Twitter. We can't find one on police, so I don't, guys. People, you're not going to find it. But tell who you think you need to contact to kind of limit the risk moving on. And actually, if you're a member of one of the cyber resilience centres, it's not a main part of what we do. We're not an incident response organisation. However, I can give you, a number of occasions when members have come to me and said, we think this has happened, we think we've been hacked, and we can give some immediate advice. Report to action fraud. We always say, you do that. It's a lot of businesses don't do that, but report to the police for action fraud. And if you tell us, we can also we can mobilise your local cyber protect officers who can give you some immediate advice and guidance as well. So there's some stuff that you can get through policing. And if you come through, if you're a member of the centre, again, I shouldn't be broadcasting this, but you'll get it more quickly if you've got us by your side than if you try and do it by yourself. I think the question you asked at the beginning, Ben, was, what kind of experiences have we had with member companies? And yeah, ransomware is a massive issue, but day to day, it's kind of business email compromise and phishing, and they're the things that we're seeing most of. We've had a large number of those reported to us recently, and obviously the social media attacks as well, not just against individuals, but against the marketplace, the Facebook marketplace, and what have you. They're the things that we're seeing most frequently. And of course, you're talking about Facebook marketplace. There's stuff you can do to, talk about back up your data offline, which is free to do, and it's fairly easy to do as well. But most companies don't do it. So once they lose their marketplace Facebook account, that's it. They've lost all their contacts. They've lost everything, and there's no way they can get that stuff back again. And we were talking about, what happens when, unfortunately, the criminals, they do a kind of commit an arson attack against the site. So they'll publish, racist or indecent images of children on that Facebook account once they've got access to it. Once that happens, the algorithm, the protocols within Facebook will immediately shut that site down, and you'll never get it back again. However, there is something else we have discovered, and we're working with protect officers at the moment, that if police protect officers contact Facebook within a certain period of time, what they can do is protect the domain name. So sometimes companies find it impossible to get back online again, Facebook, because they're trying to use the same company name, but that gets blocked again. But we're looking to see, we think that the police have got some kind of inroads there to basically allow your business to get back online again using its old operating name on Facebook. Particularly useful if you've obviously backed up your data and what have you as well. But that's something that we're, funny enough, looking to do a webinar about in November. It's kind of email compromise, Facebook marketplace attacks, and the general phishing attacks are the things that we get reported to most.
Great, thank you, Paul. You'll have to keep us informed so that we can let people know about the webinar at the on the next LinkedIn Live event as well, so we can get some people to support you with that. But of course, with what I do here at Security Everywhere, a lot of the times when we get approached from new customers or protect prospect customers is because they've been hacked, and very often it's their Microsoft 365 account. So then it's looking at how we remediate that, and I've got a certain process that I go through where we look at for anything for forwarding rules. So are they still trying to exploit the account by exfiltrating data via forwarding rules? Microsoft has actually locked down on that by turning off external forwarding by default because of the amount of this that's going on. Because if they compromise your account and you're an admin, they can then get into all the admin centers and they can set up all these kind of clever rules where they can redirect mail to their own account. And in some cases, they can be selective, where it will be if it's got invoice or a bank account, in the subject, in the body, it will filter it out and it will send it directly to the attacker's account and actually delete it from the account that's been received. So the person that's been compromised doesn't even know, because they don't see the emails in the first place. It's only some period of time afterwards when they get chased up to say, "Oh, haven't you had my email?" And they say, no, and then it's obviously becomes apparent that those emails are getting forwarded out. But of course, now that more and more of the data is also being kept in these accounts, there's an online version of everything, so they can get into your, if they've got your username and password, and God forbid you haven't turned on your MFA, they've then got access to all your data via the online Teams, via the online SharePoint, OneDrive, obviously, and then of course they can exfiltrate that So then it's been able to go back through audit logs to see when data was last accessed, and whether any of that has been has been exfiltrated. It used to be that when email accounts were compromised, we used to see that it was mainly to send more spam and phishing emails in order to further the attacks for the scammer. What we've started seeing a lot more of now is that they will actually sit in their account and watch for the communications. So they won't, they won't actually do anything to, raise awareness that they are in the account or that it has been compromised. So they can watch for the email threads, and then they'll actually try and hijack one of the threads. So if there's so with the sorry, I was just reading something and it's throwing me off. So with the compromise, they sit in the thread. So what they want to do is be able to step in on like the 4th or 5th email in the chain to carry on the conversation, but to actually divert it towards a malicious link or to some new bank details that need to be used for this invoice to be paid. So they'll actually spend more time and be much more targeted in order to do this impersonation, rather than just use the account for more spam and more to proliferate their own their own compromises. So it's much more targeted, it's much more sophisticated, and they will actually sit there and use that social engineering by hijacking a thread where there's already a conversation going. So you think you're talking to the right person, to the end user, and they actually come in and use that to manipulate. As you've just put in the chat, of course, one of the problems is if you haven't got your MFA turned on, that the attackers will then turn it on to keep you blocked out of your account. And worse, with the social media accounts, that also changed the main email address associated with the account, so that then you don't even get the alerts to say that something's happened to your account. So so with the emails, it's very much about being able to go through the audit logs and obviously changing the password, enabling MFA, and looking for through the message traces to see if anything has been sent out. So then whether it there is an issue where you've actually got to go and contact your contacts within the email environment to let them know that they should ignore specific emails, or that there was this malicious attack. So depending on how far the attacker has gone, is obviously the response needs to be appropriate. But that's where of course the damage to the brand comes in, because you've then got to go to all these contacts that have received an email with new bank details, or a link to download a document which is actually a phishing web page, and you've got to now admit to them that has that you have been attacked. Theo, what do you think about the stigma that's attached when admitting that you've been hacked?
It's a great question, and I think it's going to depend on who the person is that has been attacked and how they go and handle it. What I would like to say is that there shouldn't be a stigma when you are being attacked. It is unfortunately the world that we live in, and you should have the freedom to know and the peace of mind to know that you can actually report this and ask for help. It is going to happen. It has happened. It will happen again, that people are going to get attacked. My daughter recently went through a very similar experience where they cloned her card. They tried to clone her SIM card, all that sort of stuff. Just ask for help. It's okay to ask for that help. Even if you've got measures in place to protect you, you will never be 100% secure, unfortunately. So it's okay. It really is okay. Don't feel that you're the bad person in this. Very similar to other crimes that are being committed. It's generally not your fault. So please don't let the stigma that you didn't do enough stop you from actually reporting these types of crimes. Ask for the help. It's available to you. We've shared a couple of links already through the NCSC, what to do, how to go and report, whether it's through action fraud or directly with the NCSC. Use those tools, feel free. I know that someone did ask previously, are these platforms accessible to people that use accessible technologies or assistive technologies? Maybe they aren't yet, and possibly it is something that you can raise with them. It's certainly something that we can, from industry, help push, is that more companies start using or writing their sites and creating their sites to aid with assistive technologies. But please, if you can't use the technology, phone someone who can, or reach out to someone in the industry that can. Feel free to ask for help.
Yeah, very, very good. Yeah, very good, because that's the worry, is that too many people, because they've been compromised, A, don't know where to turn, and B, because of the thought that it's going to affect their reputation, their brand, are reluctant to go in and seek that help and get it remediated properly. So it carries on, leaving them exposed and vulnerable to further attacks because they didn't get that help. What was interesting, I thought, was with a couple of customers that you assisted us with. One customer, the MD, was, well, do you need to tell? Do I need to tell my contacts? Well, everybody gets hacked these days, don't they? Which was very, very, which was sort of the opposite end of the scale to the other company, which were incredibly conscientious about their reputation in terms of their branding and how it was going to affect them for that longer term effect. So I guess it does depend on who you're speaking to and the industry that they're in and how much that brand reputation. I guess if it's financials and law, the reputation is therefore much more important than it's going to be for other services where they don't have to rely on having that level of security in place because of the type of information that they're dealing with. So maybe for the companies that don't have that kind of sensitive personal information, it's therefore less of an issue for the brand and reputation. But
well, yes and no. From a brand or reputation point of view, you might be right, but from a legal point of view, you need to actually report these things. You're obliged, you're required to report it to the ICO if you're a company in this country. So you need to do that. I think Mac can tell us something a bit more about what happens when a company gets hacked. Let's maybe hear from him.
You find that unmute button. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Unfortunately, I've dealt with a lot of companies that have in the past been hacked, but me personally, a few years before I met Security Everywhere and Francis, we actually had quite a blatant hack where somebody had actually hacked our company website. And they were quite proud of it because they actually put a banner across our website saying you have been hacked, and then they put their go-to handle on our website. And I didn't know about it until I came out of a call with a client, and a client said to me, "Hey, what's up with this? Is this are you guys playing a prank or what's going on?" So I said, "What are you talking about?" And we went onto our website, and here this literally thing, told us in blatant English, "You've been hacked. We now control your domain." And I tell you what, that sick feeling you get in the pit of your stomach when all of a sudden you first you think it's a joke and you think, okay, I can just log in, change my password, and then you realize they've got total control of all your data and everything. And they start putting, as was mentioned earlier, they start putting two-factor authentication and everything else in on their side so that they can block you, and they'll change the email addresses for access and everything else. And that initial feeling of pure shock and horror that something you've been working on for years, your reputation, all your clients are going to see this. Plus, not only that, but all the new people that are looking to work with you that you might be in the middle of contract negotiations, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, do we really want to work with this company if they're at risk? And the thought that goes through your mind or everybody else's mind is always, well, this will never happen to me until it does. And that's the most frightening thing, because at that stage the panic can set in and you don't know where to go. And that's why I'm glad that we have conversations like this today, because giving people some direction and hope that there are people that can help, and there are things that you can do. But a common thing, yesterday I was on a call with a client, and we were setting up one of his social accounts, and when he entered his username and password, the software that I use straight away flagged and said, "You've been compromised." And he was like, "No, it can't be." And I was like, "No, you've been compromised." And then I sent him to the site that you guys always recommend, which is You've Been Pawned. And he went on there, and it was, like there was a whole list of organizations that had been compromised, and therefore his username and password was everywhere. And a lot of us, just don't know. So it's so important to take a little bit of time. Firstly, make sure that you don't use the same password for everything, like I used to. Email address, same thing, two-factor authentication. But then reach out, to these experts that are on here and ask questions, because it's, if you think that you're okay, just even then go and double check. Reach out to one of these guys and just make sure, because the loss and the time out of business, for me, it was 2 weeks focusing on trying to get my website back up, as opposed to me focusing on my business, growing my business, supporting my staff. So the cost implications are not just, my website's down. It reaches much further than that, and can ruin a business that's been around for years. And reputation can literally be gone overnight. So don't assume it'll happen to somebody else and you're immune, because in today's day and age, with the digital age, things are moving at such a rapid rate. And I in fact, I'll throw a question out there to all of you, if it's okay. With the age of things like ChatGPT and all the AI, how much more susceptible will we be in the future than we are now?
That's a very scary question to answer. The AI just doesn't stop. It doesn't have a conscience. It doesn't sleep. If you tell it you want it to do something, it's going to go and do it for you. So how susceptible? Much more than what we are today, which means we need to just take into consideration those small steps, things that we can actually change today to prevent these things from happening. Put them in place before we go and get attacked. My 2 cents.
Well, worse than just ChatGPT, there's WormGPT, which is the hacker's equivalent, which doesn't have any of the safeguards and controls, and is being advertised now on the dark web for scammers to use for these, phishing attacks, where they can actually generate much more realistic language. Particularly, that particularly aids the attacks that we get from certain malicious foreign countries that are, like the fact we experienced a 600% increase in phishing emails because since the start of the Ukraine war, because we've been attacked by the Russian hackers and scammers. So all these people that aren't naturally English speaking now have this fantastic tool to be ever so much more convincing in the text that they're using. However, on the bright side, we can then use the systems like ChatGPT to start to recognize these phishing emails, and actually, has it been generated by an AI, machine model, in the same way that, of course, from a same sort of thing, but from a very different perspective, is that they're very worried that students are going to start using these language models to create their assignments and their dissertations. But it turns out the teachers were already using the ChatGPT to do the marking for the models, and hence it started to actually highlight that these documents, these essays and what have you, were being created by an AI model. So already we're seeing that there's that it's been manipulated for people's own gain, but at the same time that gain might be to recognize the fact that it's being used in the first place, and so it is already out there being used. One of so we use Avanan, which is now part of the Checkpoint Harmony email collaboration security suite, and it was designed with one of these large language models at the back end to be able to detect the phishing. So it's actually looking at the heuristics of the email. It's looking at, does it have urgent? Is it saying you must, so that it can actually take the context of the email and not just the actual language that's being used. So we have actually been using these systems for for security, to protect ourselves for some time now. It's just that now it's become available to the public. Obviously, we've got much more awareness about it, but hopefully we are already using these systems to try and stay one step ahead of the attackers who are just beginning to start using these systems. So, but let me pass over to Daniel. Thank you very much for jumping in and joining us. We did have a number of panelists that we advertised on the site, and obviously we can only have a limited amount of people. We didn't have some of them turn up, and thank you for being available as a regular contributor. Give us a quick introduction of who you are and what you do, and your experiences from dealing with people that have been hacked or scammed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben. I was just going to say it was a flight delay from the U.S., but appreciate you guys having me. And I used to work at a top 10 global bank doing cybersecurity, cyber threat intelligence, understanding the tactics and techniques of the bad guys, and then doing exercises helping to train the leadership teams to recognize and think through what kind of decisions need to be made during a hack. I loved Mac's question. I think the language can improve when you put it through these models, so that it won't sound as clunky. The spelling errors will go away, but the tactics and techniques are still the same, right? There's that sense of urgency, click now. So you can still recognize it because there's a certain number of steps they want you to go through so that you get compromised. And so that part doesn't change so far. I wish I caught the beginning for additional context. I know, in the US, I don't know if you guys covered reporting, but in the US, the reporting site is reportfraud.ftc.gov. So anybody watching from the US, that's where you go to, and they have 5 tips for reporting a scam, which is collect information like email addresses, receipts, phone numbers, anything you can get from the scammers. Try to get as much information as you can, and then report it at the state level, the website I just mentioned. And then you can also go to places like identitytheft.gov if your personal information, like your social security number, was captured. And then you also have the ability to put a fraud alert on your credit report so that any new activity will get flagged and sent to you. So thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. It's always good to see you.
You're muted, Ben.
Oh dear, beers on me after the call. Well, thank you very much, Daniel, and we do appreciate you connecting all the way over from the States. One of the things that's great, and we're really trying to encourage with these LinkedIn live events, is the collaboration. Not just cross borders, because it's something that we're obviously all experiencing, but actually bringing the experience of what's happening in different areas can make us forearmed and forewarned about what may then happen over here, particularly with the US, and the corporate entities that get targeted there. Paul, if I can bring you back in, because you've mentioned about the number of your members that have found that their details are already online because of historical breaches, and how that then poses a threat to make them vulnerable to be hacked and scammed.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, very much like Mac was saying earlier. I experienced a personal. I've gone through this myself. So back in 2015, my Apple account details and password were released into a dark web data breach site. There was a game that my kids were playing on their Apple devices called Bin Weevils. Bin Weevils, yeah, whatever. It was some strange game they played on the Apple devices. And a US company, and they had a massive data breach in my password in the clear, not even hashed, and my username was leaked, along with hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of other people who used the same game. And hackers came along, and they used my username and password to see if I used the same thing for Amazon and for EE, the phone company. And in 2015, I did. And then they started to make fun while they, make hay while the sun was shining, as it were. And we managed to stop it before it got too bad. But I lost a bit of money personally out of that. So I've been hacked, and I only found out about how it happened when I joined the centre in 2021. And my inspector, who's quite technical, who worked in cybercrime for a long time, she said, "Have you ever heard of this website called haveibeenpwned.com?" And I put my details into it, and lo and behold, I've seen it had been breached. My details have been published a number of times and were there for the world to see. And so, as part of our kind of onboarding our membership, one of the first things we do is we ask them to go to this website and to put their phone numbers and the email addresses into it to see what their exposure currently is. And we routinely find about half of the members have already got their details already out there. So you don't need to worry about phishing emails, because your details are already on there if you haven't changed them. So it's about understanding where you currently sit, and what have you. So yeah, it's a massive issue, and most people that we speak to have never even heard of this website or the fact that their details could even be there. So yeah, what the people who run the website have done is a great service. I know this is available elsewhere, but yeah, so it's something that we work on. And I just want to go back on something which somebody mentioned earlier about the shame or the embarrassment, reputational damage, perceived reputational damage around reporting to police or to publicise what's happened. I think it's worse if you don't tell anybody and then they become victims as a result of your breach, because that happens quite a lot as well. There's actually a recent article, actually back in May of this year, the NCSC have published a blog about the myths about not reporting, about nobody gets to hear about it, everybody else is you're safer, and it isn't just all nonsense, it's just stuff that gets spread around. But just give you an idea of the context and the stats in our region. So the Eastern region, which is Kent, Essex, Norfolk, Suffolk, Bedfordshire, and Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire, so 7 counties in the east of England, about 600,000 small and medium-sized companies within this area geographically. And from the crime survey, 30% say that they've been a victim of a cyber attack in the previous 12 months. That's about 200,000 businesses and organizations. And that's not just getting a phishing email, that's actually having something which has had some impact on their business. Action fraud, 3,500 reports in the same time frame. So that's between 1% and 2%, I guess, isn't it? My maths isn't great, but so businesses are still worried about reporting it. I know one of the reasons why they don't report it is because they think, well, what's the point? Because we're not going to find out who's responsible, we're not going to get our money back. And to be fair, there are probably other things that you might want to do first before you report to the police in many cases, such as activate your response if you've got an insurance company and that sort of thing. But it's still something that should form part of every business's response to being hacked or scammed online. It allows the government to build up a truer picture of what's going on and to allocate resources accordingly. We're looking at so about 40% of all reported crime is cyber related now in the United Kingdom. It's probably the same in the US as well, Daniel. It's a massive amount. I talk about my days as a police officer back in the mid 1990s, going to theft from motor vehicles, people having stereos stolen out, or having shed breaks, and people having electric tools. That still happens, but in a much lesser degree, because most property crime, most acquisitive crime is based online. So 40% of reported crime in this country, and currently the police spend, and I work for the police obviously, about between 1.5% of their budgets dealing with it. So, and part of the reason for that, it's not just because of the underreporting, but that's part of it. There's also the fact that it's seen as a victimless crime, which it's not, absolutely not. We talk to people, the impact on people's personal lives and mental health and is huge in many cases and can lead to some really, really tragic consequences. And there's some research going on about that currently. But it's also the economic impact. We talked about, I mentioned this before, the biggest single threat to the economy of the United Kingdom and by extension the rest of the Western world, if not globally, the biggest single threat is from cyber. It's not from inflationary issues, not from Brexit, not from the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine obviously has an impact on cyber. It's from cyber crimes, and that will never change. We're in this world now, and it'll be here for us forever. But unfortunately, most of the businesses that we talk to, they have, and again, this is not being rude or being disrespectful to the small business community, but it simply does not feature as a priority in their world. Most SMEs they're fighting fires. As an SME managing director myself and working for the police, those things do sound a bit odd together. That's what I do. You're fighting fires. You've got financial issues. You've got consumer issues. You've got problems with supplies. You've got new regulations coming into place, and they're all here and now. Got to do it now. Red line, bottom line issues that the business have got to face. And unfortunately, cyber isn't that. Cyber is about preparing for something which might happen, will happen sometime in the future. It's about long-term planning. And long-term planning and small and medium-sized businesses, those things are often at odds with each other. So I understand why it's not a priority, but it does need to be. And that's part of what we're trying to do, to raise the awareness, working with groups like yourselves to try and get more businesses on board to take some simple steps now to protect themselves.
I think you made a great point there, Paul. With normal crime, you have a chance of catching the person who snatched your purse, right? But these people are thousands of miles away in jurisdictions that you can't touch so much of the time. So it does take a lot of resources, and really, it doesn't matter how you're victimized. That's a psychological wound, and it, it's traumatic. Even a cyber attack could trigger somebody not wanting to leave their home. Ironically, right? It didn't happen in the physical world, but you were still taken advantage of, and it ups your anxiety levels such an incredible way. I think reporting it gives you some sense of closure. In the U.S., not everything is, there's thresholds for reporting, depends on what industry you're in, but it's worth it just to, it's another data point that the police can use to find some lever or some way to shut down the scam or report it, right? I think a lot of it is educating yourself. There's a us.gov site, scams and fraud is a good place. If you think something's not right, check these, the consumer.ftc, the Federal Trade Commission.gov, and the FBI, IRS, all of these organizations, Better Business Bureau. I think that what the scammers take, advantage of is not wanting to share this with other people, right? It's the immediacy. Don't reach out and phone a friend, right? Just click now. And so anything you can do to make yourself more aware before it happens, or slow the process down so you have time to think through it. Call your friends that are smart in this space. Call your local police. They'll give you some good advice as well. Yeah, thanks, Paul. Appreciate your perspective on that.
Thank you. Ben, if I can mention just one more thing about something, which is, because obviously joining the centres where we are in the UK, they're free of charge because we're obviously subsidised by the government and by policing. But there is something which we do talk about quite a lot, and it's called police cyber alarm. And most managed service providers have not heard of it. And we're working with some in our region to try and raise their awareness to get that rolled out to businesses. So basically, it's a free piece of software. It sits on your firewall, and as well as reporting malicious activity into your network, it also reports back to a central police controlled, if you like, database, which looks at what's actually going on in the here and now, but across the United Kingdom, and which allows them to build up this rich picture of intelligence around what's happening, and that can actually help everybody, who, whether or not you're a member of police cyber alarm or not, but it's something which we would encourage, to join your centre. We'll tell you about police cyber alarm, and you can get it loaded onto your system and start protecting yourself and others as well. Thank you, Ben.
Lovely, thank you, Paul. Yes, so we have sort of come across the cyber alarm, but I think one of its very early iterations. But I believe now it's much easier to install. Is there actually a cloud-hosted service as well that you can redirect through? I know we need to come back and have another look at it, because I think it was Linux server based in the very early days, which obviously wasn't necessarily that available to everybody. But it's come a long way since then. So yeah, it's very much a case of making sure that people, like I say, it's all about the awareness. It comes back to making sure that people know that these resources are out there, which is why I really appreciate the time that you guys put in to join us in these LinkedIn Lives events to make that happen. I just want to pick up one little point that Paul you brought up and then Daniel alluded to as well, and that's the attitude of the attackers. So, we talk about, what do we do if I've been hacked and scammed? You've got to think about the mentality of these people as well. So, you get the ransom note. Oh, this is purely business. I've done some bug finding for you. So I've hacked you so that you know about where your bug is, but you've got to pay me money now. But if you don't pay me the money, I'm going to extort you anyway and release your data out there. And it's where people have this, it's not going to happen to me kind of mentality. That's exactly what these guys are taking advantage of. Exactly that. So it comes back to the awareness. Right, we're coming down to the last few minutes of the session. And once again, it's flown by in a blink of an eye. But I just want to bring it back to the original topic, and that we've what can we do if it happens to us? Well, there's been some great posts and suggestions, across the chat group as well. So we've had some good posts. There's one from Veridiana. Apologies if I've pronounced that wrong. And that's a two-factor database where you can actually go and make sure that the service that you're using, when it has multi-factor or two-factor, and how to set it up. And I think that's a great resource that people can use to protect themselves. Obviously, we've talked about reporting it, whether that's to the FTC in the States or to Action Fraud. I think you mentioned about from the disabilities point of view, then obviously makes that much harder. But you can actually ring Action Fraud. I think we've got the number scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So Mac, thank you very much for getting all these things out there. The NCSC in the UK offers the facilities to report the phishing sites, report the scam emails, so that we can actually create that awareness. I think, as Paul said, in relation to the cyber alarm and in reporting to the police, the more that the police have this information to detect, to build up a picture of how these attacks are taking place, then on a national scale, they can actually start to see where things are targeted and where they can then go after, in terms of being able to work with generally with other international organisations to actually clamp down on some of the real large players and the most malicious ones out there targeting us. But it's just been taking away that sense that of the stigma of that, I've been done, I can't tell anyone because, and it's actually, no, you need to, so that you can get the help, so that it doesn't become such an emotional burden, so that you can actually help by contributing to the police and to their network and to their info, so that we can better protect ourselves. So we've got 5 minutes, guys. Who would like a final word before we shoot off on today's topic? Theo, you go on, Daniel.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think that was a great point, because you get scammed because you lack knowledge, right? Typically, that's what happens. And the thing is, the scam goes on long beyond the moment of compromise, And so, if you don't talk to those experts and report it, you won't get the tips to know, lock down your credit and, start filing for identity fraud if that's what you need to do. So it keeps you a victim longer if you're not reporting. So that's my 2 cents, and appreciate being here with you guys.
Yeah, very good. Very good point, Daniel. Theo.
Ask for help when you need it. Don't be scared to do so. But try and take the measures to protect yourself before you need to ask for help. There are so many free resources out there. I try and say that people need to become paranoid about security. And I want to take it a step further. If you start thinking about security in your everyday life, I want you to transcend the paranoia and get to a place where you've got the confidence in yourself and in the measures that you're taking, that you're protected. That's what I want you to try and get to. Exceed paranoia. Be prepared. And be protected.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, Theo. Because of course, prevention really is the only cure. Paul, your last minute.
Well, a couple of specific things actually. I know we've talked about some things that ways people have managed to find themselves on the wrong side of this, but there's an ongoing campaign against LinkedIn users currently. The police have reported it. The National Management Centre reported it. Make sure you've got multi-factor on your LinkedIn accounts, because if you haven't, then you might lose it, and we all know what happens after that. And another thing I was told about by somebody who works for the nuclear industry, he's a CISO within that, and they've been coming across, is it called quishing or QR code phishing? It's something which hasn't really featured a huge amount, but if you get sent a QR code on an email and it all looks lovely and it says you scan it and go to it's just another way of getting you to go to the criminal's website. So don't do it under any circumstances, or make sure you double and triple check before you do that. So that's the last thing for myself.
Yeah, very good point, Paul. No, there's been a lot of publicity about the QR code or quishing. We actually brought it up on our talk about the mobile security, because typically you scan the QR code with a mobile device. And of course, we recommend Sophos Intercept X, which is the free download of both the Google Play and the Apple App Store. And it has a QR code scanner, so that you can scan the QR codes and it will check the link before it actually takes you there to make sure it is safe. And this actually started during the pandemic, when restaurants started putting QR codes on tables, and the attackers were going around at night and replacing the QR code with their own QR code, which then had the phishing site with a redirect to the original site, but that meant they claimed your card details when you signed up. So yeah, no, that's a very good one. So just Intercept, if I can get you to pop this one on, just to scroll this one as well for us, please. Intercept X. So if you can scroll that one on the screen for us as well, Mac, just as a final thing. And Mac, thank you very much for your help and assistance as always today. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. It's great that you're there making it interactive as well, so that we can actually post some of the comments and suggestions, not just that we've talked about as part of the panel, but also from the people in the comments from the viewers and listeners as well. I just need to tell everybody that we're still evolving our LinkedIn audio event. So instead of being the third Monday, it's now the third Thursday of the month. So i.e. 2 weeks from today. And the audio event, the idea of doing the audio event is that the audience can actually get invited up to actually ask their question and engage more on whatever it is they want to talk about. So we're leaving the topics open. It's an Ask Us Anything event. There'll obviously be the usual panel of professionals and specialists to help answer these questions. But do come and join us 2 weeks today for the LinkedIn audio, where you're invited to ask us anything about about whatever it is that's pressing in your cybersecurity concerns. So we look forward to hearing from you then, and if not, of course, we'll be back on the first Thursday of next month with a new topic for you, and all the information will go up on our Security Everywhere site, and the invites will go out within the coming days. So it just remains me to say thank you, Mac, Theo, Paul, Daniel. Great work today, gents. Have a great rest of the day, week, month, and I look forward to doing this all again with you very soon. Right, and to everyone out there listening, wherever you are in the world, please stay cyber safe.
Thanks, Ben.
You're muted, Mac.
Me playing special moments there. Anyway, this is us logging out, so let's give it a go, and we'll see you guys on the Ask Me Anything on Thursdays.